Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to engrave on acrylic using your Cricut Maker machine and how to take your engraving from looking like this to looking like this with just a couple of extra steps and a few extra seconds. So when I first tried engraving, I obviously used a drawn design because the engraving tool works similar to the pen. But when I actually then did the engraving, because acrylic is obviously see-through, it's really difficult to see that design unless you hold it in a certain light. But by just adding in those couple of extra steps, I was then able to create a thicker design that can be seen much clearer. So for this project, you are going to need some sort of acrylic blank, whether that be a keyring, a bookmark, or just an acrylic sheet like this. This is an A5 acrylic sheet and it is 1mm thick. You can use up to 2mm, but anything thicker than 2mm won't go into the machine properly. So this is what I'm using. You are also going to need a purple strong grip Cricut mat, and I would also recommend having some masking tape. You will need a Cricut Maker machine. I have the Cricut Maker 4, but I believe that you can engrave using any of the machines from the Maker series, and you will need the engraving tool. So I have mine in the quick swap housing, but the engraving blade is number 41. So let's head over to Design Space to create our image. So I've opened up Design Space and I'm now just going to go to New Project and Blank Canvas. And the first thing that I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bring in a square from Shapes and make this the size of my A5 acrylic sheet. So I'm going to unlock the proportions and make the width 14.8 and the height 21. So I'm just basically just using this as a guide and I'm just going to make it white. Now in theory I could set this to be a guide, but I'm actually going to leave it as a cut and that will become clear soon why I'm doing that. So now that I have my shape already, I'm going to find a goose. So I'm just going to images and searching goose. And because I'm using the engraving tool, which works the same as the pen tool, I want to filter by draw as the operation type. Now this is actually the goose that I want to use, so I'm just going to click the plus to add that to the canvas. But just a little hack for you, if you ever want to find a pen or an engraving drawing and find that actually when you filter by draw there aren't enough kind of good options, what I quite like to do is instead filter by cut and draw, and that will quite often bring up something that just has a cut offset. So if I just quickly show you, let's say that you wanted this goose instead, you could add that and then just delete the cut and then you're just left with the draw. So that's just an extra little hack for you there. But I am happy with this goose here. So I'm going to change the operation type to engrave and make this a bit bigger so that it fills a bit more of my rectangle. I don't want to make it too big because I am going to be adding vinyl text on the top of my acrylic sheet to say geese. So I want to make sure that I'm leaving enough space for that. So now comes the point where we're going to make this a bit thicker. So the way that I do this is I select my goose and then I go to edit up here and offset. And I want to create a really small offset of 0.01 centimeters and just apply that. So as you can see, that's made this black line a little bit thicker, but I want to make it thicker again. So I'm just going to go offset. It's still 0.01 and apply again, and I'm going to do that once more. So just like that, my engraving has become much thicker, and from a distance, as you can see, you can't tell that there's lots of lines. It's only if you zoom right in that you can see that it's lots of little individual lines. But when you actually engrave it, that's not going to notice at all. It's just going to look like one slightly thicker engraving line. So if I were to go to make it now, it's going to have each of those offsets as a different layer, which is not what we want. So it's really important you select all of your engraving items, so that's the goose and then the 3 offsets, and the way that I'm doing that is just by holding down shift and selecting all of them, and then I'm going to attach those together. That way they will engrave as one layer. So now when I go to make it on matte, it's one thing. Now the reason that I kept this square, or this rectangle even, is because I'm actually going to click on these 3 little dots here, move object, and put it onto the same mat as my engraving. And now what I can do is I can make sure that my goose is going to end up in the centre of my acrylic sheet. So I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to line up this rectangle with the first lines here. On your mat you'll be able to see these grid lines, so I'm just lining this up as best I can. I'm zooming right in so that I can line this up as close as possible to those lines. And I'm going to zoom back out, and now I can place my goose where I want it, try and get it nice and central in the rectangle. So I'm happy with that placement. Now I obviously don't actually want to cut out this rectangle, and if I left the rectangle there then I wouldn't actually be able to select the right material because you can't cut acrylic. So I'm now going to click back onto the rectangle, go back up to these 3 dots here and hide selected. So now we're left just with the engraving, and we can now prep our mat. So I'm starting off just by peeling away that protective film. And I'm now going to place my acrylic sheet on these grid lines, which I showed you in the Cricut design space. So we just want to get it as close to being along these first grid lines as possible, just like we did with the rectangle in the design space. That looks pretty good. Just going to press this down to get it really nice and adhered to the mat. And I also just like to add a little bit of masking tape along the edges just to make sure that the acrylic is extra secure. Sorry, I've just realised that you can fully see the camera and everything in the reflection. So I'm just going to add some to the top and the bottom. You can tape on all 4 sides if you prefer, but because my mat is still super sticky and this acrylic isn't very thick, I don't feel like I need to tape on all 4 sides. And we'll now head back over to Cricut Design Space to set our material. I'm just going to click continue and then choose my material, which I have bookmarked, and that's acrylic thin 1mm. Obviously if you're using 2mm acrylic, then you'll want to just go to browse all materials, search for acrylic and select the 2mm one. So I'm selecting that, and then it's telling me here to load my engraving tool and then load my mat and press the load and unload button. So let's go and do that. So I'm now just opening up my Cricut machine, and I need to swap from the fine point blade to the engraving tool. So I'm just opening up clamp B, and I'm just going to pop the fine point blade into this bottom compartment and place my engraving tool in and clamp that in. And I can now slide my mat in and press the load and unload button. Sorry, that's a bit blurry. And I can then just press the play button and it will start engraving. I will speed up this footage, but I will put on the screen now how long this took to engrave. Also, I do just want to comment on how quiet this is at engraving. I expected it to be really noisy and I was a bit worried it was going to make a really horrible kind of scratchy sound, but actually, as you can hear, it's really, really quiet. Okay, so that's all done, so I can now press the unload button, which is flashing, and that will release the mat. So now this is finished engraving. I've just zoomed in a bit so that you can see that there are some little kind of flakes of acrylic where it's been engraving. Now the temptation is just to swipe that away, but that can actually scratch the acrylic. So what I recommend doing is getting a fresh piece of masking tape and just kind of bouncing that masking tape on the acrylic just to pick up those pieces. There we go, I am happy with that, so I can now remove my acrylic from the mat. So I'm going to start just by peeling the tape. And then I'm actually going to flip my mat over so that I can peel the mat and bend the mat away from the acrylic rather than the other way around, because this acrylic is quite thin. I obviously don't want to bend it or snap it. And there we go. So I'm obviously just going to put the protective film back onto my cutting mat. And there we go. Now we have our goose all engraved, and you really can't see that there's lots of little lines unless you look up super close, and even then it's quite difficult to see that there's little lines. If you find that there's still some little flakes of acrylic on there, you can just go in with the masking tape again just to tidy it up, but I'm happy with that. And yeah, that is how you can engrave on acrylic using your Cricut and also make it thicker and more defined. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up, and also let me know what other crafty videos you would like to see here on my channel. Please also do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all again very soon with another video. Bye!